Hello everyone, this is part 24 of What If Naruto Leaves Konoha and Awakens Lava and Boil Release, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Land of Fire. Konoha outskirts. Tsunade and Sakura were running through the forest to attempt to reach Konoha before the attack began. It was painfully obvious to them though that quite a swath of destruction had already been made as they passed by a few wrecked areas of ground now no more than craters. Both were extremely concerned for their home, and Tsunade felt helpless as she was the Hokage, the supreme leader of the village and its greatest protector, and yet she wasn't there to fulfill her duty. Damn it, we have to hurry. She repeated in her mind again, hoping the mantra would make her and Sakura arrive to the battle quicker. Wait, Tsunade-sama, look. Sakura pointed out something off the path they were headed and Tsunade risked a glance. What she saw intrigued her enough to investigate further, so she led Sakura off into a grass clearing. Inspecting the seals surrounding the 4 pots they found, it seemed as though it was the area where Madara had released the tailed beasts. Walking up to one of the containers, Tsunade observed the kanji and frowned, confirming that the monsters had already been released. Feeling a fit of rage come over her, Tsunade reared back her arm and shattered the fragile clay pot. No, Tsunade-sama. Sakura tried to stop Tsunade but it was to no avail. Luckily for the girl, Tsunade's assumption was correct and no repercussion was made. They aren't here, Sakura. Madara must have already released them. As I feared. We need to get moving, we already wasted too much time. Sakura nodded and allowed Tsunade to begin making her way through the forest again, settling into moving right behind her master. I hope we can make it in time to Konoha. Oh, where is Naruto when we need him? 000. Konohagakure. Village Gate. You won't touch the Hokage as long as Jiraiya of the Sannin is here. Jiraiya announced to the offending Madara Uchiha, taking up the spot of protecting the Hokage. What are you doing? The Hokage grunted out. He had promised to defeat Madara. Jiraiya was only going to get himself fighting the venerable Uchiha. Hokage-sama, you have to handle those tailed beasts. I'll hold him off for that long at least. Madara chuckled and launched himself forward, hoping to surprise the Sannin. Jiraiya-chan. Fukasaku warned and Jiraiya gathered his natural energy into a protective flame around him, preparing for a counter. Gotcha. Madara was about to punch Jiraiya in his face when he felt a bone-shattering hit land against his jaw and sent him spinning backwards. Holding his jaw from the pain, he looked at Jiraiya with his Sharingan but couldn't detect anything strange about his body. When he was around the man though, a strange sense came around him as if there was another presence or strength nearby and he could only guess it was dangerous to get close to the Sannin. Jiraiya smirked as the man got hit with his frog kata, extending the reach of his power. It was then that Madara noticed that Jiraiya's arm was extended as if he had punched him. That's impossible, my Sharingan read his movements, there was no way he would reach me in time to hit. There must be some trick to this new mode he is using. I'll have to be careful. It's been a while since someone has been able to land a hit on me. Madara grabbed his jaw and sickeningly snapped it back into place, also cracking his N at the same time. That was the perfect wake-up call, thank you Jiraiya. Scowling at his mockery, Jiraiya prepared another attack directed at the man. Instead of taijutsu, the white-haired hermit would test the man's abilities with a ninjutsu attack. Going through hand signs, Jiraiya prepared a powerful fire attack with Madara's curious eyes. Fire release, big flame bullet. Fire release, big flame bullet. Jiraiya's eyes widened in surprise to find that the man copied his jutsu and sent it back with full force, quenching either attack. Fight fire with fire A. Madara thought triumphantly as he decided playtime was over for Hashirama. He could sense the tailed beast's weakening and his control slipping away. But this is no time for games, I'm too close to lose now. Jiraiya watched as Madara's Sharingan changed shape and the man began to disappear into some invisible portal. Fukasaku knew the treachery of the Sharingan and tried to warn the sage to attack. Jiraiya boy, don't let him finish teleporting. Looking at the elder in surprise, Jiraiya leaped forward with his enhanced speed and tried to land an attack only for Madara's body to disappear right before he could hit. Sailing past the man's previous location, Jiraiya's open palm attack into the wooden wall and sent splinters shattering down either side. Attempting to find the man with his senjutsu chakra, Jiraiya could find little trace that Madara had even been there. Suddenly, he turned around to see Madara reappearing right next to the Hokage and knew he had to think fast. Sage Art, Hair Needle Barrage. Using his fastest attack, Jiraiya attempted to see off Madara's chance to hit the Hokage, sending razor-sharp hair splinters at the man. Sensing the danger, Madara quickly went through with his previous plan and used his Sharingan to teleport himself and Hashirama to a more secluded spot. The Hokage, remembering a similar experience during his previous battle with Madara, allowed the pull to happen so as to keep the danger from Konoha. The tailed beasts have been subdued, Madara was too late. Their power cannot help him any longer, now it is only he who is a danger to Konoha. Jiraiya quickly leaped to the Hokage's side only to find the man, along with the villain behind the attack, gone. Huffing angrily in frustration, Jiraiya s his fist into the ground and again made a large crater into the village gate. Feeling multiple signatures approaching his position, he regained his composure to welcome a fully decked-out group of Jonin arrive, led by the one and only Kakashi Hatake. Kakashi, last time I heard about you, you were slated for death. The older man joked only to have Kakashi I smile back. Last time I heard about you Jiraiya-sama. You were s. The Sannin nervously scratched the back of his head and tried to recover. Well, you see well it kinda happened like, before he could continue, Jiraiya was interrupted by Inoki Yamanaka, one of the accompanying Jonin. Sorry to interrupt Jiraiya-sama, but where did the first go? We saw him arrive with you at the gate but haven't seen him since then. Jiraiya frowned and looked down, leading everyone but Kakashi to do the same. Wait, what do you mean the first? Shukaku Nara decided to answer his confused friend, taking pity on him as he was still in jail during the time the first arrived. You see, under unknown circumstances, Jiraiya-sama brought a resurrected first Hokage with him to help us. You must have still been in the dungeons during that time, but without him, we would never have been able to subdue the beasts. Kakashi could only look at the man in shock, making the Nara turn back to Jiraiya for a proper response. Really though Jiraiya, where did he go? The white-haired man sighed and scratched his head as he began to lose his toad-like features. I was protecting him well enough from that masked man, Madara, when the man got past me using some sort of time-space jutsu. He took Hashirama-sama somewhere far away from here, I suppose to fight him one-on-one. I am strong with senjutsu but I'm not a miracle worker, even I can't be instantaneous like that guy can be with his Mangekyo Sharingan. The other Jonin nodded, it was a bittersweet victory with the loss of their first Hokage not only once but twice now. I see. But can't you find him with your sage chakra? Suggested Choza Akamaiki, so far remaining quiet in the presence of the others. Jiraiya sweet dropped at not thinking of doing it before. I'll handle it, Fukasaku announced, placing his webbed hands together and attempting to gather and focus his natural energy to encompass the area. The other waited quietly, hoping that they could rescue the Hokage in time. It took a few moments longer before the toad could lock onto Madara's unique signature of chakra. Opening his eyes from his focused state, Fukasaku prepared to announce to the impatiently waiting shinobi. I've found him, follow Jiraiya everyone. Jiraiya boy, that way. Fukasaku pointed towards the northeast, an area of deep forest that would no doubt offer much seclusion for fighters. With little choice, Jiraiya began to follow Fukasaku's directions with the others in tow. The remaining shinobi in Konoha set about restoring order and securing Konoha to make sure Madara left no surprises. 000. Konohagakure. Forest outskirts. The forest that was once at peace had been shattered, broken trees, animals, and craters littered the once pristine area. Konoha's nature had been damaged, but it was not yet broken. Within one such clearing not too far from the hidden village, a portal began to open up. Its contents had recently arrived from a trip to another dimension, and both were ready to fight one another to the death. Hashirama remembered the strange sense of vertigo when Madara had used the same trick against him at the Valley of the End. From what he could tell, Madara could send a person to some other dimension and have them slowly a lonely death. For some reason though, it seemed the Uchiha would never grant this fate to the Senju. It seems I am one of the few he wishes to kill with his bare hands. I only hope I can last long enough to stop this madman. Tumbling out of the portal, both combatants took a moment to steady themselves. Most often, Madara had no real problems with his time-space technique. This time he was rushed during the transition and it was enough for him to falter as he escaped the dimensional portal. Hashirama recovered as quickly as he could and his hands together into the snake hand sign, hoping to catch his rival off guard. Sensing danger, Madara catapulted back to see wood spikes erupt from the ground where he stood. He landed on his feet and slowly shook his head in disappointment. Hashirama was so predictable. TSK, I think we both know I can dodge something like that. Hashirama cracked his knuckles and pointed his arm straight at Madara. The Sharingan allowed the man to track the chakra going into the appendage. Wood release, great forest. A dozen sharp stakes formed around the now wooden arm and launched at Madara, forcing the man to either dodge or counter. Feeling an exhilaration he hadn't felt since he last fought Hashirama, the Uchiha felt daring. Charging forward, he waded through the spikes to reach the Hokage. Sensing the danger, the Senju created smaller spikes along each stake and extended them, making the spaces in between each stake a death trap. Madara felt small sea begin to form on his skin and made himself transparent to avoid further damage. A momentary lapse in the Hokage's thinking allowed Madara to land a cheap shot to his chin, sending the Hokage flying back. Madara leaped forward to pursue but watched as Hashirama's momentum sent him into a tree. The strange thing was that there was no crater and it looked as if the man had planned it. Biting his lip, Madara looked around for his now missing enemy. Damn, the valley had no trees for him to use that technique on, damn him. Hashirama allowed himself to slowly slip out of a tree and began to go through hand signs as his opponent's back was turned. Finishing with the snake seal, the ground began to shift around Madara and he realized he would be in trouble if he didn't do something quick. Earth release, rising stone spears. Earth release, encompassing mud wall. As the spikes launched inwards to skewer him, Madara formed a protective earth wall around himself, allowing the jutsu to cancel each other out. Using his transparency technique, Madara walked out of the protective barrier and back out into the battlefield, waiting for his opponent to show his face again. Come on now Hashirama, don't tell me that all you have left is some tricks. Suddenly, a dozen Hashiramas ran out and charged towards Madara. Looking inside of them, he saw no chakra systems at all, allowing him to realize they were wood clones. Too easy. Allowing one to get up close, Madara ducked underneath the punch sent towards him and kicked the clone away, in the process shattering the ribcage made of wood. Seeing the others preparing to attack, Madara went through more hand signs and decided to use the man's own jutsu against them. Earth release, rising stone spears. Spikes came out of the ground and skewered the few remaining clones, leaving Madara alone on the battlefield again. Gotcha. Madara was taken by surprise when he was suddenly dragged underground by an unseen force. Hashirama jumped out of the earth, showering dirt and rocks on the battlefield as Madara took his time in escaping from the simple jutsu. As Madara reappeared, Hashirama sent more stakes of wood flying out of the ground to attack the Uchiha. Easily dodging them, Madara was surprised to find them following his movements and decided he would have to change plans. As one around to him from behind, he sent a devastating axe kick onto the wood and made the stake fall limp to the ground. He rounded to hit another that was poised to strike him in the sea, shattering it with little semblance left of its original form. Sensing a presence from behind, Madara turned to avoid a few kunai and found himself face to face with the real Hashirama. Sensing that playtime was over, the Senju Hokage knew that there was little time to waste and he knew he had to defeat Madara quickly. Memories of their last battle came back to him, and while Madara did have the ultimate Mangekyo during that time, he had not developed those new powers so well. I do not remember him using that transparency jutsu very much during our last fight, so I cannot gauge it that way. However, I have noticed that it takes little outward effort to do and he only does it when he is in danger. If he has to hit something, he must be solid and that is where I will have to strike, to do damage. I must be prepared to take a hit as well. Hashirama cringed at the thought as he grappled with his old rival, neither getting an advantage in taijutsu. You've lost Senju. Once you're gone, I'll just recapture the beasts, you can't stop me. Madara gloated, loving to see the angry vengeful look on the usually calm man. You've gone insane. I'm going to fix my mistake that I should have done years ago, and I would have had you not been a coward. Those words affected Madara by making his bee boil and sent Hashirama reeling back with a kick to his abdomen. How dare you call me a coward? It's the Senju who sought peace because you knew we would win if your clan didn't move to more desperate terms. Hashirama said nothing as he charged forward again and prepared to deliver a punch to his mortal enemy. Madara smirked and decided he would do the same, launching forward in an attempt to hit him first. As their fists passed one another, Madara realized something was off about Hashirama's fist's trajectory. Taking the punch to his face, Hashirama held Madara in place and allowed a wooden stake to drive through their stomachs, taking a strange pleasure in the look of anguished surprise in Madara's eye. Surprised. Madara. As both were impaled on the same stake, they were face to face and unable to move. While the move did not necessarily harm Hashirama as it was not his body, it still did leave him unable to move. Madara for one never thought his old rival would result to such a trick to win, but then it was painfully obvious to him that there was no way the original Hashirama could have done it as they both would have been harmed. You were summoned. It seemed so obvious now, but in his blind rage in seeing the Senju alive he forgot reason. Hashirama smirked. Took you long enough. Scowling underneath his mask, it soon changed to a strangled cry of pain as the stake began to shift. That's one secret you can't hide from me, Madara. I was able to observe your jutsu's apparent weakness to natural energy of any kind. My wood release was a perfect way to combat your transparency jutsu. It seemed we were destined to fight, huh? Madara said nothing to the man, only trying to escape was his priority. Sensing a presence behind him, Hashirama attempted to turn his head to see the new presence only to cringe at the sight. The death god hovered behind him and he knew it was time for him to go. Well, Madara, my only regret was that I was unable to stop you with my own two hands. I guess I'll have to leave that to this generation of shinobi. The wall of fire still burns brightly to the fate of the world. The Uchiha didn't understand what the man was getting at and continued to try and escape from the traps set upon him, getting desperate as the stake began to shake and falter. Hashirama noticed that new arrivals had come, but he was too weak to look. It felt as if the S-energy that had been with him was being sapped. Both he and the soul that had been housed in the body were being sapped away into the death god. With his last piece of energy, Hashirama placed his hand on the struggling Madara's shoulder and bid him one last smile, a thing that only a true believer in the wall of fire could give. Damn you Hashirama. Grandfather. Tsunade had arrived in the field just as her venerable old grandfather began to disintegrate into ash and dirt, leaving nothing but a pile of the material behind. Madara scowled at her presence and, with the wood user finally gone, shucked off the weak and frail wooden stake that had impaled him. Holding his stomach in obvious pain, he turned to see that Jiraiya and more leaf shinobi had arrived, obviously tracking him through his chakra. Stop him. He's the one that attacked the leaf. Jiraiya ordered and the Jonin leaped into action, charging forward to meet the heavy-breathing Madara. With the last of his strength, the Uchiha used his time-space jutsu to return to Kirigakure. He had been defeated and most likely would if he did not do something about his wound. Damn you Hashirama. You must torment me even after death. Tsunade slowly walked over to the pile of ash, seeing something glisten with the moonlight striking it. Brushing away what was left, Tsunade's eyes widened in shock to find her grandfather's necklace dangling from Orochimaru's en. Her old teammate looked at peace, no evil smirk or curled cackle, just a man that got to happy. Orochimaru. You didn't. Did you really? Yourself. Tsunade couldn't believe it, and she began to shake with silent sobs as she remembered the two men who had just before her eyes. A sudden strong grip to her shoulder made her look up and once again shock came to her. There was Jiraiya, her old friend who she had thought for up to a year since. At first, her eyes had only locked on Madara and her disappearing grandfather. She had tuned out the man's voice when he had given the order to attack and ignored her peripheral vision of his white hair as she stepped forward to observe the glistening necklace. Now though, there were no obstructions, it was just her and Jiraiya. Without any words spoken, the old man smiled and lowered himself to his knees, bringing her face against his shoulder. There Tsunade Haim, he spoke softly, so softly it almost didn't sound like Jiraiya to her. It had to be though, no other man would have gotten so close. Everything's alright now. And for the first time for many, the Jonin and Sakura watched as Tsunade cried happy tears and held on to her fellow Sannin for all he was worth. It was a touching reunion and a welcome change to the horrid death and destruction that had happened only a moment before. Is this what Hashirama had planned for all along? 000. Konohagakure. Village Gate. 3 days later, Tsunade, along with her immediate subordinates of Kakashi, Jiraiya, and Shikaku stood at the gate to welcome the 4 oncoming armies of the Alliance. She stood with her Hokage hat on to have some semblance of her authority as Hokage. Jiraiya stood proud next to her and Shukaku and Kakashi flanked them with their hands in their pockets. It was soon realized that, without Jiraiya's intuition in going to Orochimaru for help, that the Leaf Village would have been destroyed. It is impossible to rouse an army and arrive at a foreign place on a moment's notice, things like that take time. Time it seemed, that Konoha could not have afforded. Now they were waiting for the imminent arrival of the armies so that they could plan the counterattack. Do you think they will believe what happened? Questioned Kakashi. It was a bit unbelievable to think the criminal Orochimaru would himself to summon Hashirama Senju from the grave and save Konoha from 4-tailed beasts and Madara himself. Tsunade looked at the Jonin and shrugged. Most likely not, however, we don't need to tell them every detail. We will keep things short and hope that the Raikage can make some sense on what to do next. She turned back to staring down the road. A small dust cloud could be seen in the distance. Jiraiya looked at his teammate, glad to see she had recovered since 3 days ago. While he had been quite afraid of her reaction to him coming back to life so suddenly, she had been quite hospitable to him. In fact, he noticed she smiled a lot more around him than she used to. It must be my manly charms have finally gotten to her. I knew they would eventually. His perverted smirk got the better of his face and Tsunade glared in his direction. You got a problem, Jiraiya. She showed her fist as proof and he quickly held up his hands in defense, although his eyes did wander to her sea, now adorned with the first Hokage's necklace. His smile left him for a more serious demeanor as he remembered what the woman had said when she took it from Orochimaru. I'm going to return it to who it rightfully belongs to, and hope that he can forgive me for my harsh words. He's more fit to hold the Kagela than I am. Naruto, I wonder what you will say when she finds you again. I know you deserve an apology from me at least. Mom, they are here. Shikaku noted and Tsunade turned to see the 4 other leaders standing in front of her with their forces intermingling with each other behind them. Tsunade, I see your village wasn't destroyed. A noted, and she couldn't tell if the man was happy or sad about the fact. Yes, that's right. It seems that thanks to my teammates' return and an outside source of help, we were able to rout Madara's attack. I believe it's time we take the fight to him though, my village just barely averted this close call. Onoki grunted and Tsunade inclined her head to view him at his short height. Now wait a minute, Tsunade, where exactly are the tailed beasts? I think it's only fair we recover those we have lost as our own. Tsunade gritted her teeth as the selfish old man reared his head again. They are gone. I sent Shinobi to investigate their whereabouts but it seems the beasts have disappeared. Onoki's eyes widened in surprise. Disappeared? How does something that large just disappear? Tsunade shrugged and turned back to awaiting his judgment. Are you right, Tsunade? I think it's time we take the fight to Madara to keep something like this from happening again. We shall allow our armies to rest for now and give you time to gather your forces. Once you are prepared, we march for the coast and then sail to Kirigakure to finish this war. A cheer elicited from the men behind the cage and Tsunade began to give orders for them to disperse and find housing. The alliance of the great elemental nations was finally showing its fangs, but the Azu sphere was already 2 steps ahead of them. 000. Azugakure. Azukage Tower. 2 weeks later. Mom. It's time. Mei sat in her husband's chair, waiting for the final reports to come in of Azu's battle readiness. Looking at Ao, she sighed and realized the fated day had finally come. The day they take the fight to Kiri with the allies Naruto had garnered. While Snow was unable to send military support, new chakra armor had come in and been issued to all active Anbu squads as well as high-ranking officers. Ao's usual red cloak was now filled out with the armor that it held beneath, a custom color made for Azu. All the armor plates were red. Mei also had one, although she did not like its design and chose not to wear it. She also had a unique one made for Naruto, although she was unable to send it to him. I see. Shall we go then? Ao nodded and she got up from her seat and walked out of the office with him following close behind. As they walked, the hurricanes fell into step behind them, completing the now group of 8. Mei soon arrived at the lobby and exited the building to find Azugako's gathered forces awaiting her command. Squads of Jonin, Chunin, Anbu, and medical teams were standing at attention in columns waiting for her command. This was the frightening power of an entire shinobi village geared for war, and it was the first time Azu was the one taking the fight to the enemy. Platoon march, she ordered, and the columns began to march towards the village gate along with Mei's entourage in the front. Families lined the streets, watching the men and women guardians of their village pass them by. Banners and other heraldry hung high along the shinobi marches, the ninja proudly marching to the drills of drummers and musicians. The Uzumaki swirl adorned something everywhere a person would look, the village showing their pride for their ancestry and for their armed forces. The army left the gates of the beloved village behind. It was time now for war. It wouldn't be long before they reached the shores and, together with the gathered allies, set sail with their ships to Kirigakure, the final stop of the war. 000. Kirigakure. Mizukage's office. Madara sat upon his throne, holding his stomach from the throbbing pain. It had been a little over 2 weeks since his reunion with Hashirama, and it only made him realize just how weak he was compared to that man. His wounds from the battle over decades ago had not yet recovered, and the most recently inflicted one was still hampering the Uchiha. To make matters worse, what was left of his intelligence forces alerted him to the impending invasion of not only Azu and her allies but the elemental nations and their alliance. There was little left for Madara to do, and there was nowhere left to run. He would not rest easily though. He would take Kirigakure's forces and as many Uzumaki down with him as he could. Mizukage-sama. A man burst through the doors to the office and quickly bowed in apologies. Sir, enemy forces have been sighted at the rock barriers you ordered created. The Azu sphere forces have arrived. Madara scowled. They came quicker than he expected. Making to stand up, a hand suddenly went to his stomach and he growled in pain. Sir, you shouldn't strain yourself. The front isn't a place you should. The shinobi was off when his tea was being gripped tightly by Madara. I dare you to finish that sentence. You little worm. He threw the messenger across the room and began to hobble out of the building, intent on being near the front to view the battle. I will not let Hashirama win so easily. I am not finished yet. 000. Kiri's Coast. Staging point. Start of defensive barriers. Ma'am, it appears our ships cannot go any further with these rocks in our way. Al noted as he and the Mizukage observed the long line of sharp rocks that lined the coast of Kiri's main isle. So it seems, we can't go around either, as this is the only area with a sizable dock to fit all our ships. It seems this is where we get off. Mei suddenly jumped off the boat and began to walk on the water, and many shinobi began to follow suit until the entire force was marching across the sea. We aren't too far from land, it should only be a few minutes to reach the docks. Chojuro warned the group as they proceeded across the water. Suddenly sensing danger, Mei held up a hand to stop and watched as the water in front of the army began to form a large vortex. From the middle of the vortex came a gigantic water dragon and it bellowed out a challenge to the shinobi gathered. A few Hyo clansmen came up, their affiliation obvious with the dark hair and icy blue eyes, and placed their hands on the water. It wasn't long before the entire water dragon was frozen solid and nothing but a mere decorative piece in the middle of the sea. From either flank of it came Kirigakure shinobi and it was soon a battle royal between both forces. Mei fell back to get a better vantage point rather than get bogged down in the fight, jumping up onto one of the large rock barriers. It wasn't long before it became apparent to her that new presences had arrived and it seemed as though the Elemental Alliance forces had come to their aid. Kumo's white flak vests intermingled with Azu's red and earth and fire techniques sprung out to meet Kiri's water jutsu. Turning to her left, Mei saw Tsunade standing next to her with a big smile on her face. Mei Terumi, 5th Mizukage. Mei cringed and turned her attention back to the battle, looking for someone in particular. My name is Mei Uzumaki, thank you, and I am not the Mizukage. You should begin to participate in the fighting now, Hokage, before we do all the work for you. Akeru. Tsunade watched as a man appeared near Mei, obviously a special forces type of some sort with a large scroll on his belt. Yes, Mei-sama. He nodded his head in respect and waited for her orders. Just as Naruto's orders had requested of him, he now held onto the scroll that would summon their fearless leader into battle. I want you to get ready to summon Naruto. I fear it won't be long before Madara decides to come against us. The man saluted and disappeared to prepare for the summoning while Tsunade eyed the woman curiously. I was wondering where Naruto was. What has he been doing? Mei looked at her and gave her a simple answer, hoping she would allow her some space. Training to fight Madara. Before Tsunade could make her answer, it seemed the fight further intensified with a new surge of Kiri's reinforcements joining the large battle on the sea. Mei spied an orange mask and knew Madara had come in person this time. Finding Akeru, she gave him the signal to summon Naruto. The man nodded and, together with his squad of beast tamers, opened the large scroll and began to gather the sufficient chakra needed to bring Naruto and his forces to their location. Madara, using his Sharingan eye, was able to see past the battle and lock onto the imminent danger of what Akeru could bring upon him. Charging forward through the mass of fighters, he knocked away any warrior who would stand in his way, disappearing and reappearing from one side of the battle area to the other unscathed. Mei realized Akeru would be in danger and quickly moved to intercept with Tsunade close behind her. Madara saw the previous Mizukage come at him and ignored her, knowing it was only a distraction. Akeru held his ground and prepared to summon Naruto even if it would cost him his life to do so. Just as Madara arrived to take ace at the Anbu captain, a large puff of smoke appeared and covered easily half of the battlefield. Madara felt an overwhelming feeling of heat come from in front of him where the summoning circle was and leaped backwards from danger. Mei had stopped her charge just short of the scroll and now waited impatiently for the smoke to clear. She wanted to see her husband again after so long. When it finally did clear, she was frightened at what her husband had transformed into. What the hell? Madara said aloud, trying to figure out just what he was looking at. Behold, Naruto-sama's training has been completed. The first human to ever harness the avatar form. Yamara announced. He was one of 6 large lava monkeys that had come along with Naruto to fight alongside him and his people. Avatar form. Mei sounded it out but could not come to grips with the sight of him. The power and heat that surrounded him were overwhelming, it almost brought her to her knees. Madara Uchiha. I have come to destroy you. 000. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.